The NFL is a very cold and very unique business. It is and always will be a what have you done for me lately league, and in some cases that's where things can get complicated between front offices and NFL players. Sometimes teams have players that are making entirely too much money for little production after grinding for years to earn that extension, and sometimes coaches are like that too. A large difference between coaches and players though is there is no salary cap for coaches. So while a team can extend a player and give him X amount of dollars even if it's earned, they are most of the time stuck with that player even if he becomes a dud after an extension. Coaches can be fired at any point as long as the owner is personally okay living with the financial loss of extending that coach. That brings us to the topic of today's video, as I'm sure you saw the title of the video and thought a few things such as, wow, this is very bold, or this guy is an idiot. If you thought the latter, then please just stick around and hear me out as to why Mike Zimmer should be fired. As you guys saw, I put out a message Friday as to why this video wasn't out yesterday, and I do apologize about that, but it's all good now and here we are. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. We're going to take a look at the entire Mike Zimmer era, starting back when he was hired in 2014. As you guys know, I'm a Vikings fan, and I will speak for most of us, though not all of us, when I say we are a very reactionary fan base, and for me personally, I admittedly play a huge part in that. And if you don't believe me, then just go on my Twitter feed after the Seattle loss on Sunday night. Anyways, Zimmer was hired over 6 years ago after the Vikings went 5-10-1 in 2013 and had parted ways with current Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier as their former head coach. Zim was brought in as a defensive mastermind, and his first ever draft pick was 4-time Pro Bowl, and hopefully more to come with that, linebacker Anthony Barr. A few hours later, general manager Rick Spielman traded up to get what looked to be the franchise quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater at 32nd overall. Selecting a quarterback in the first round is always big, but what was huge about that was the Vikings at the time had the rights to control his fifth-year option and jumped in front of the Texans, who were surely going to take him at pick 33 after taking Jadeveon Clowney at number 1 earlier that night. Anyways, Zimmer led the Vikings to a 7-9 record in 2014, which was a 2-win improvement, and there were some bright spots on that team, such as Teddy of course, and second-year corner Xavier Rhodes coming into his own. This was a successful year for Zimmer, as Adrian Peterson was suspended for all but one game of the season, and when a team unexpectedly loses their best player and still wins 7 games with a rookie head coach and rookie quarterback, I would deem that as a success. Now, fast forward to 2015, and the Vikings went 11-5, were division champions, and beat the Packers in Lambeau to secure the division title in Week 17. All is good so far in the Zimmer era. Vikings fans unfortunately know what happened the next week, as it was the Blair Walsh game, and the title of the video says why Mike Zimmer should be fired, and while I do think that, I will certainly give Zim credit where it's due, and he coached a hell of a game that day, and held, at the time, the back-to-back conference champion Seattle Seahawks to 10 points in a negative 25-degree with the wind chill game. Zimmer should have won a playoff game that year, and there's no doubt about that, and as much of a non-Zimmer supporter as I am, I will admit that. But to be realistic about this, even if he had, there was no way with that team they were going to go into Carolina and beat the Panthers with the 2015 MVP Cam Newton if they even got that far. Now fast forwarding to 2016, and it started out awful as Teddy Bridgewater had one of the worst knee injuries a player can have on the last day of training camp, and what was surprising about this was it didn't go down from there. They started out 5-0 with Sam Bradford as their quarterback, and this team was clicking and looked like they were going to be competing for a Super Bowl. Zimmer's defense was getting credit, and nicknames started coming in, such as the Zim Reapers and everything of that nature. They had a Week 6 bye and stumbled out of it with 4 straight losses coming off of the bye and went from 5-0 to 6-6. There weren't any rumblings of Zimmer being a bad coach then, and again, to be fair to Zim, there shouldn't have been at that point in time. He had a backup quarterback, a backup running back all year as Adrian Peterson tore his meniscus, and he was out for most of the season. The wide receivers room wasn't great quite yet, as Stefon Diggs was still coming into his own, and this was the first breakout of Adam Thielen's career. A 5-0 start led to an 8-8 finish for the Vikings in 2016. Now we go on to what will undoubtedly be the best year of Zimmer's coaching career, and it was 2017. This season opened up on Monday night against the Saints, and the Vikings looked unstoppable as Sam Bradford was healthy and was electric in the opener. Stefon Diggs had 2 touchdowns and Adam Thielen had over 150 yards. Bradford then went down and Case Keenum took over, and after a 2-2 start to the year, the team went on a 7-game winning streak and finished the year winning 11 of 12. We all know what happened in the first playoff game, and for Vikings fans, to me at least, the Minneapolis Miracle is as close as I've ever felt to winning a Super Bowl, as admittedly I'm not old enough to remember 98, but after that game it was absolutely unreal. The helmet toss, the interview, the nobody leaving the field, just everything. But what gets lost in the Minneapolis Miracle is it should have never happened. It only took place because Mike Zimmer's defense blew a 17-point halftime lead. So while the Minneapolis Miracle was a great moment, it should have never happened, as either the Saints should have won the game, or the Vikings should have already won handedly. The Vikings got absolutely trounced the next week in Philly, and then in the offseason signed Kirk Cousins. Not surprisingly, it took a year to adjust with Kirk, and in 2018 they went 8-7-1, and went from the NFC Championship game to missing the playoffs entirely. 2019 was a solid year, as they went 10-6, won a playoff game, and then again got beat. So here we are in 2020 with Zimmer's team sitting at 1-4 through 5 games. The title of today's video has been building for some time, as while I will admit Zimmer is a great coach, the question I would ask Vikings fans, who may be ticked at even the suggestion of this: do you honestly think the team can win a Super Bowl with Zimmer as the head coach? Do you realistically think they can string together 3 straight wins, assuming they get the first round bye, as it could very well be 4 straight wins without the 2-team bye weeks now, against great and elite competition with him as the head coach? For me, the answer is no, I don't think they can do that. And while the Vikings Twitter gets absolutely ridiculed for always defending Kirk Cousins, more so in the past than currently, the media hasn't realized how loyal and how vicious Zimmer supporters and defenders are. I've had several conversations with Zim defenders, as I'll tweet something like, Mike Zimmer's team had the first 175-yard rusher and 175-yard receiver ever in the same game and lost, referring to the Titans game in week 3 for those that don't know, and they'll come up with some excuse as to why it's not Zim's fault. But the bottom line is, Mike Zimmer is a good coach. He's not a great or elite coach like a Bill Belichick, John Harbaugh, Andy Reid, or Pete Carroll. He's not in the upper echelon of coaches, and because of that, I don't think he'll ever win the big game. And what I want you, the viewer, to get out of today's video is Zim should be fired because he's not great enough to win the big game. Now, there are awful head coaches in the NFL, like the Adam Gases and Matt Patricias of the world, and we know that. Zim is thousands of miles above those guys, but Zim is also below the upper echelon of coaches, and from a Vikings fan standpoint, I would rather my team blow it up than to get to, at maximum, the divisional round of the playoffs every year. Another big reason why I support Mike Zimmer being fired is it's no secret how hard he is on the players. And not to say, oh, the players should have it easy and if they lose, they get a juice box and say, oh, we'll get them next time. But in the same sense, the type of disciplinary leadership style that Zim uses can rub people the wrong way, and quickly at that. We saw it run Stephon Diggs out of the town to the point where he pretty much demanded a trade, and the type of leader he is works and only works if a team is winning. See New England, for example. If a team is 3-9, then it doesn't matter, because the players at that point most of the time have checked out for the year. The Vikings looked absolutely horrendous in Indy back in week 2, and truthfully, I thought they had quit on Zim then. The past 3 weeks though, just a 1-2 record, has shown major improvements, and the Vikings are 2 points away from being a 3-2 above 500 team. They will beat the brakes off Atlanta Sunday barring something spectacular, and like I said, I don't like Zimmer, but I will give the man credit where it's due. And back to the Zimmer defenders point, people will always say, oh, well, look at the quarterbacks he's had to work with, and they refer to a young Teddy, Sam Bradford, Case Keenum, and now Cousins, and while that may be fair, I ask this: at what point do you stop making excuses for the guy and realize what he is as a head coach? He is a good coach, but not a great coach, and the past 6 years have proven that. I also want to say I really do hope I'm wrong, and if Zimmer led the Vikings to a Super Bowl, I would applaud the man and make a whole nother video on why I was wrong. This year is obviously a toss-up, as we had a worldwide pandemic, which obviously affected the NFL season, and in an interview during training camp, Zim said they would spray the pads after a defensive lineman or offensive lineman hit them with cleaning product to be safe, so this year is definitely different than others. But the point still stands that Zimmer will not win a Super Bowl as the head coach. I am convinced of that, and the maximum this team can go is the divisional round, or as we saw by the flukiest play in NFL history, the NFC Championship game. As I said, I would more than love to be wrong about this and really hope that I am, but unless something seriously changes in the next year or two, it will be this way until the Wolves move on to their next guy. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I put out an announcement Friday, and I may start doing that on Sunday nights for what you guys think the biggest takeaways are, to really try and interact with you guys more, as I can't say enough how much it means to me for the support and growth of the channel. Now, I will see you guys next time. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. Have a great day, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Skol Vikes.